So I've been watching the infighting on the American right over Tucker Carlson's recent interview with the white nationalist and Groyper prince, Nick Fuentes. There are a lot of issues in this debate, including when legitimate criticism of Israel shades into anti-Semitism. But one of the issues is whether it's possible to have a politics of right-wing nationalism that doesn't end up encouraging the hatred of the Jews. Just this question came up on a recent episode of this show when I interviewed the avowed Christian nationalist pastor Doug Wilson and asked him about his battle with the forces of white nationalism, what he calls the Dank right. You aren't the only person who people find appealing because you're seen as sort of speaking forthrightly and saying politically incorrect things and using the words the libs don't want you to use, right? You share that space with people who also call themselves Christian nationalists, right? For whom that does mean a white nationalism or an anti-Semitic nationalism, right? And I think one of the interesting things that listeners should be aware of is that in addition to your wars against the secular liberals and milquetoast Christians and so on, lately you've also been engaged in this kind of extended conflict with people who want a sort of formally racialized form of Christianity.
That was actually my first internet controversy many years ago, was with the Kinnists, white identitarians, and I call them skinists. And I've been in polemical firefights with anti-Semites and people who have actual misogynists, not people who are accused of being that way.
Do you think you're going to win that fight?
I do,
because one of the things that has tended to happen in the recent past, the 20th century past, right, is that when you have periods of liberal weakness or liberal collapse, there are forms of conservative religion that try and fill that void, but there are also consistently forms of identitarian politics, racist politics, fascist politics that fill that void. And you can see versions of this, obviously, in 1930s Europe. And I'm not sure that the record of the 20th century proves that in the battle to define post-liberalism, it's guaranteed that the colorblind Calvinists are coming. Well, I mean, again,
we may not win, but we're going to go down fighting, and that matters because we're Bible people. In other words, I want to fight against racial vainglory, ethnic vainglory, or ethnic malice, because the Bible prohibits it. In Christ, there's neither Jew nor Greek, slave free, Scythian and Colossians or barbarian, and it's one of the centerpieces of the New Testament. I believe that Christian pastors should fight, and they should fight sin. And it's not just sin on the left. It's not just the progressive leftism. It's also, I call it the dank right. And then there are people who say that they have no enemies to the right, but that's just telling the devil what direction to attack you from.
Well, and this is also, this will be maybe my last attempt in my crusade to get you to say something nice about liberalism. Right? But it does seem like some of these forces on the dank right that you're talking about, racists and anti-Semites and so on, that has been kept at bay in part by the same society that you were condemning in no uncertain terms earlier in the conversation for abortion and other sins. And it seems to me that itself should make you think, yes, there are particular sins and particular evils that are, that are part of the liberal moment or the late 20th, early 21st century America, and Christians should condemn them. But every society has particular sins, and it should be possible for even a Christian theocrat to say, maybe liberalism did an okay job suppressing racism and anti-Semitism, even as it was doing some other bad things.
No, I grant the point in principle that I don't believe that classical liberalism gets everything wrong. And I really don't believe that. And I enjoyed very much the country I grew up in, and I received many benefits from that era. So that point's granted. But on the dank right, I believe that the liberal treatment of young white males has been one of the causes for this recoil and eruption. So what you had was a toxic combination of a bad economy, of young men being told repeatedly that they are the cancer of the planet, that their masculinity is toxic, that their skin is the blight of the world, and their heterosexuality is a hate crime. And they've been kicked in the head for years and years and years, and they took it ill. And then when you combine it with no economic opportunities and all the Trumpian issues, you combine it, they got pretty surly and erupted. And I'm just interject here. I'm expecting a good bit of it to go away. There's a big if here. If there's a Trump boom, economic boom, I don't know that there will be, but if there is one, if his presidency is considered a successful one, and there's economic breathing room that's created, I think a lot of this goes away. I think a lot of the churn is economic frustration, no opportunities, and who do we blame? Well, there's always Jews. We can always blame the Jews. But in the meantime, I'm just explaining how that came about, not defending it.